So today we're going to talk about timelessness and immortality. And this is something that has been rolling around in my consciousness my whole life. Like, I think when I was young, I don't know how old I was, but I was probably at least in my teens. It could have been in my 20s, but I think it was in my teens. And I read the books called The Masters of the Far East, the teachings of the Masters of the Far East. And I remember, and it's a story about this man, Baird Spalding, who went over to India to try to find gurus who had transcended time and space and were immortal and all these things. And this was back in the, I don't know, 1800s, I think. I'm not getting my facts exact today. Anyway, and he went over there and he did find a master, and the master brought him into the Himalayas, and he spent time with his whole crew. And these guys were scientists, like they were, this had to be real, this had to be able to be proven. And he spent time with these people who were immortal and ageless and timeless, and they lived in this, I want to say, an exalted human state. But what I actually believe, and that's why I really love talking about this, and I'm glad to share it with you, is because I don't think it's exalted. I think it's actually human. I think it's actually how we're designed, which I think is why it's rising right now. I think this is why this topic, it feels like it's almost just naturally expanding into reality. What was interesting is when I read this and they talked about these people who were immortal, and not immortal like this body dies and the soul goes on, that this body continues in perpetuity, forever. And what I remember at that time is it was almost like that moment when I realized that a truth landed inside of me that no one else understood. You know those things, those little things that make you go, whoa, I think that's true, but there's no one you can talk to about it? And it was almost like this, I suddenly had my own little secret about the universe. And that secret was, I believe that we're immortal. And I had maybe I was 16. Maybe I have no idea how old I was, but who am I going to talk to? In 1985 about the possibility of, that I was actually an immortal soul, right? So it was one of those things that just stayed inside, and then you just go out and live your life. And then maybe little things over here happen, or maybe you see a movie every so often, or a book crosses your path, or an idea crosses your path, or maybe you read about physicists studying time and space and saying how time actually expands and contracts based on what you're doing. How there's sort of that, tick-tock time that's like this, but then time can expand. If you're doing a beautiful Viennese waltz with your lover and time disappears. So all I would get were these little snippets, as I was going through life, that maybe I'm right. Maybe there's something to it. Maybe it's not just some weird idea. But again, I never found anyone I could talk to about it. And then, of course, when I was sick in 1999, and I met Jim, my teacher, who helped me through that illness, he was one of those people. Like, I remember listening to him and talking to him. And at that time, he was only in his early 40s. Like, it's funny to think of it now because, and the same thing happened at the time. I remember listening to him talk, and we would spend hours and hours and hours talking at my kitchen table. Just literally, my husband would come in from the barn for breakfast, and he'd leave, and he'd come in for the barn for coffee, and he'd leave, and he'd come in for dinner, and he'd leave, and Jim and I would still be sitting there talking, right? And we wouldn't have moved. But I remember looking at him at one point saying, how old are you? And I actually was expecting him to say 400 years old. That's what I was expecting, because what I was listening to, how we were talking. It wasn't, I don't even know if it was what we were talking about, but how the conversations flowed, how the presence was in the room. This guy had to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. It just didn't make any sense that he didn't fit into our timelines. And then he said he was 44 or something. And I said, are you sure? Like, I actually didn't believe he was less than 400 years old. So then fast forward, they start talking about the upcoming year 2012, right? In the end of the Mayan calendar and the end of time and all this. And this was something else that many years before that, I had read all kinds of books about prophecy and different things like that. And they had talked about this coming end of time. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't think it's what they mean. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think it's literally the end of time. I think that's what's coming. And of course, again, I had no context for this. I had nowhere to slot this strange idea. It kind of lived there with that we are immortal, right? And then time disappears. Like, our brain is designed to live in time and space. That's the whole point of this incarnation. We live in time and space. We are a physical being, right? So this concept still has nowhere to land. So 2012 comes and it goes, right? And of course, because I taught Kundalini Yoga for many, many years, Yogi Bhajan used to always teach about the coming time, the age of Aquarius, all this, and how the systems would fall and we would live in timelessness and we would all live as individuals and we would, we would sit there and listen like you do to a guru, right? And you just sort of, like you have no idea where to slot any of it, but something rings as true. Something rings in your soul as, I just want to tuck this away somewhere because at some point in the future, this is going to make sense, right? So 2012 comes, and one of the other interesting things about the Kundalini Yoga tradition, which I recognize has come under fire, but I actually believe it's a beautiful technology, is that we always had a sadhana. We were supposed to do this chanting sadhana. I'm not a diligent person, as I've told you guys before. I'm not a ritual person. But when we did this sadhana, it was like a 52-minute sadhana or a 62-minute sadhana that we had to chant all these various chants. And he said, the reason we're doing this is preparing for the age of Aquarius. We're preparing for an entirely different way of being. And we need to heal our nervous systems for this expansion, for this new way of living. And that's interesting to me, right? So the year 2012 comes, and here's what's really interesting, is before 2012, so I used to teach yoga teacher trainings. Like, I had developed a different version of Kundalini Yoga. It was still the technology as Yogi Bhajan taught it, but without a lot of the religion and other things. I kind of taught something that honored the tradition. I called it the soul of the teacher training, and really how to become a teacher, right? And so I had taught the first cohort, I think in like 2011. And so it was a 10-month teacher training. And, I developed it was all Yoga Alliance and all that kind of thing, right? And I had developed the curriculum, all the exercises, how the whole thing would play out. And I thought that I would now be able to just reteach this 10-month program every year, right? Like, easy peasy. I've done all the hard work now. I just rinse and repeat, right? So I think the first cohort went through in 2011. And then 2012 came through. And then I think I ran the next one mid-2012. So a whole new group comes in, and I begin to try to teach what I just taught a year and a half ago. And the technology, luckily, that's the same, right? It doesn't change. But how I taught it, the stories, the exercises, the personal development, whatever it is, that the extra stuff that was sort of the container for the technology that was being taught, I couldn't reteach it. I would sit there in front of this room full of people, and I would try to explain something, and it was out of time. It was finished. This concept was no longer required. It had been integrated into the consciousness or something. Something had changed. And I couldn't figure it out. And of course I kept trying, right? I kept, no, I want to do the thing I just did. I don't want to have to recreate this every year. And it wouldn't work. And then I realized that, no, you've got to actually teach to this moment. You can't teach last year's program. You have to teach this year's program to these people in this consciousness. And I don't think I'd ever in my life experienced such a rapid shift in consciousness between the first cohort and the second. I just was like, how can humanity have shifted so much in a year and a half? So then, so that was an interesting experience, right? So then 2 years later, I run a third group, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, between the first one and the second one, surely I'll be able to repeat something. No, I couldn't repeat anything. It's like I was actually speaking to a room full of people who were completely in a whole different consciousness. And I thought, and the other interesting thing I noticed from group to group as the years, especially out over the 2012 piece, we started learning instantly, right? What once we might have taken, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it for 3 months in a row, or we're going to do a daily sadhana for 40 days, or we're going to do this thing. This wasn't needed anymore. You literally could do one thing, and most of the time it would just snap in, and now you're different. And this was the beginning of me understanding the end of time. It was sort of like the difference between the time lag between the idea and the manifestation, right? Historically, 50 years ago, we might have had an idea and we might have brought it to fruition 10 years later. Maybe we had to study, maybe we had to do this, maybe we had to do that. That time lag is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point that half the time we hear something and it literally goes, it readjusts us, and now we're different. It's really something. So one of the interesting things about this is, why would we talk about timelessness and immortality? Because again, for me, unless it's helpful, unless it actually applies to my life today, I don't really want to think about it. I love a thought experiment, right? I love anything that kind of allows some expansive ideas so we can kind of swim around in a bigger pool. I like that. But in the end, the only way for it to actually loop, the only way for it to actually gain momentum or grow, is it has to have a practical application. So this time thing, if the time continuum or whatever is closing, right? That the difference between the thought and the manifestation is getting smaller. What's really important? Being aware of our thoughts, right? Because we're manifesting quickly, right? Good or bad, right? It's there was a movie called Sphere. I think Sharon Stone was in it, maybe Dustin Hoffman. And it was a movie all about some egg type sphere was found in the ocean. And I'm not going to give it away, but basically, if you went in there, whatever you were thinking about would instantly manifest. That's an interesting, on the one hand, you think, how cool is that? But then you have to ask yourself, is it? Are we ready for that? Are we ready to have instant manifestation? Or are our minds still driven by fear and worry and guilt? Like, what is it that are the predominant thoughts within us? And again, I'm not talking about this so that we get all stressed out, like, oh my God, I'm still not enlightened. I'm going to just manifest all this nasty stuff. Like, that's never the point, right? But the point is to take it seriously, right? If we say to ourselves, you know what, if I have a negative thought pattern that is repeating, it's almost like, what if this is actually really serious to stop? Like, why do we chant mantra in yoga, right? Because it interrupts the thought process and replaces it with something that is truly beneficial. So for example, again, one of the things that drew me to Kundalini Yoga was the mantra Sat Nam. Because Sat means truth, Nam means name, or it means I bow to. They all have very many meanings. So Sat Nam, if I meditate and I inhale Sat and I exhale Nam, what am I telling myself with every breath? That the truth within me is who I am. That I bow to the truth within me. That every step of my life must be in honor of the truth that is my soul. This is a very valuable mantra, right? To say in every step of my life, is it in line with my soul? Yes or no? And the world has told us that this is not important, that it's more important to make other people happy. It's more important to, feed the system. It's more important to make money. It's more important to look good. It's more important to lose weight. It's more important, to keep your spouse happy, whatever, right? And what do all of those other things create? Chaos in our lives and sadness. That's what we're creating, right? So to repeat a mantra and to take it seriously and say, no, what is my truth? What is my truth? What is this soul's journey? What is the next path on my soul's journey? The idea of this shifting simply makes this real. That this idea of repeating a mantra is really valuable. It isn't just some concept we read in a book. It's really valuable, right? And what's beautiful is our lives will go forward at our speed. It's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to go, oh, I really got to get on this, or I've got to, It's just a case of going, right now, in my life, right now, what is one thing I can do that is in line with my soul? What's one thing? And just do that one thing. Because the beautiful thing is we do the one thing and it creates a ripple effect into our whole life. We don't have to fix the 50 things. Because we fix the one thing, it's going to fix 30 things. The dust settles, we change the one thing again, right? It's not, we're very, very interesting, multidimensional, interconnected beings. We change one thing that lines up with our soul. A lot of aspects of our life exhale, right? The other reason, there's many reasons why I love talking about this, is one of them is holding the idea in our mind and saying, what if this is truth? What if we are timeless? What if we are immortal? What if that actually is our reality? And whatever we've been told or taught by our predecessors, because again, our predecessors, our parents, the system, the society, they're not smarter than we are. They're just repeating what they heard, right? It's not. Steve Jobs said something like that once, that never be afraid of new thought, because the thinking that's all around you is yesterday's thought, right? And so imagine that what I'm saying is true. Imagine this timelessness is our reality. Well, then imagine how much time or how much energy we waste on worry, regret, all these things, because we are literally stressing ourselves out when this moment is the whole thing. Like, there is no tomorrow, and there's only tomorrow, and there's only the past, and there's only this present. It's all, right? Like, we don't even have the languaging to describe this. It is literally something we can only experience in our soul, right? In our non-physical, right? But to me, this is very exciting, because if this is true, 90% of what I stress out about disappears. It's just gone, right? And that is very valuable in the land of how does this apply to my day-to-day life? How does this affect how I spend my day? My days become really happy. Like a contentedness, and again, not in a negative, stagnant way, but my genuine happiness in the moment becomes infinite, right? I literally just become, here's me in my life. How awesome is this, right? And then suddenly we just breathe deeper, and we just kind of, here I am in this beautiful eternal moment, right? One of my favorite Buddhist mantras is present moment, only moment, which is an incredible mantra to practice when you're meditating or walking or anything, or making love or making food or anything, right? I'm not doing this so that then later I'll do this. This is the only moment. And it's something interesting that I've become really conscious of, especially in the last year and a half, because my life has become very, what do you call it? I've lost the word. Predictable. Before a year and a half ago, I literally didn't know what country I'd be in tomorrow, because I was just traveling and living wherever I was called. And so I could be in Portugal, I could be in Boston, I could be in Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. Who knew where I was called next? And then this all happened, and now I have an apartment, and I wake up in the morning and I make my coffee, and then I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this, and then I fall asleep, and I wake up and I have my coffee, and then I do this and I do that, and I was really conscious about a year ago. I was really thinking about this, thinking, wow, I'm literally repeating this cycle. And then this idea of I was rereading the Masters of the Far East, and I was sitting there thinking, these moments are all the same. Whether I'm tucked into bed at night, or I'm sitting drinking my coffee, or I'm brushing my teeth, or I'm talking to you guys, or I'm hanging out with my kids, I am in the same moment. I am the same. And there was something about that. I can't, we don't have language for this, but there's something about that was like, so it doesn't matter whether I'm reading a book or drinking a coffee or hanging out with my kids or driving a car. It's all the same moment. So that changes everything, right? Suddenly then, well, how do I want to feel in this moment? What do I want to bring to this moment? Because if this moment is exactly the same moment as will happen in 3 hours or tomorrow or whatever, I may as well dive into it, whatever it is, because it's the same moment. And I started tasting timelessness, right? Something started growing inside of me. Something started going, wait a minute. This is it. This is what it is. So then, what is the practical application of this? Well, we have to really be clear that the life we're living is the life we want to be eternally in. Right? How am I spending my moments? How am I being? Right? This focus on being as opposed to what we are doing. So all of a sudden, like, I love doing logic problems, and I love doing acrostics, acrostic puzzles. I can sit with a cup of tea and do a acrostic puzzle and just be happier than you could ever imagine a person. And I realized that, I don't know, something just changed. It's like the whole world just slowed way down. And I was allowed to enjoy sitting doing my acrostic puzzle. Because I can really beat myself up about the fact, you should be doing something helpful. You should be creating something. You should be doing this. You should be, accomplishing something. It's like, yeah, but whether I'm accomplishing something or I'm sitting doing a acrostic puzzle, I'm just being. And then about 6 months ago, I started writing for medium.com, this website. And it's a place where people can write and share articles and that kind of thing. And so I started writing for there, and I decided that this was going to be a huge part of my business. This is where I was going to make money, and it was going to be great, right? Because you get paid per read. Like when people read your articles, like I think it costs like $5 a month to join, to be like a paid member of Medium. And then when people read, you get paid. I was like, oh, this is brilliant. I love to write. How awesome is this? Medium. This is great. And one of the things was to go and find different publications within that and write for them, right? Wow. So I'm looking around at all the publications going, which one will I write for? I love to write, right? And God knows I have lots of opinions about things, right? This is epic. Well, I found these erotica publications, and I thought, ooh, erotica. Could I write erotica? And it was hilarious because I kind of like dove into this weird shaming thing, right? Like where it's like, no. I'd always prided myself that the Tantra I teach is the spiritual aspect, right? That's what I teach. I don't teach that red Tantra that's all about sex and stuff, right? Which is hilarious. Because if you guys, lots of you guys have been in my talks before. It's not that I don't talk about sex. I love talking about sex. I love applying spirituality to sex. I love having sex. I love everything about it. So it was kind of a hilarious thing that I was now afraid to write kind of intimate sexual stories. Anyway, lots of crazy moments, so I decided to write an erotica piece. And I said I was going to write under a pen name, and I sent it to one of my friends. And he said, this is really beautiful, Katrina. Like, this is like literally a tantric lovemaking experience. Like, people would learn from this. I said, yeah, I'm going to write under a pen name, no, so nobody knows. And he's like, why? Why are you hiding? This is what you do. This is what you teach. Why would you hide this? So, of course, I went through all kinds of inner growth, let's call it, to address shame and all these things, and guilt and fear of what other people would think and all these things. And then I discovered that I love writing erotica. I just love it. Then I discovered I could write erotica on Amazon and write short stories and all this stuff. Well, I would sit just behind me here with my computer, closing my eyes, and I would write the sexiest stories, right? I was in total bliss. I was in complete timelessness. I was in complete, I'm quite sure that when I sat, it could almost feel this white light shining off of me because the bliss and happiness was so complete. It was like my soul was dancing. I don't know why. I kind of have this little vision of myself, spending my older years, writing erotica under a pen name, and that's what's buying me my chocolate and it's such a kick out of this. But imagine if that's my moment, if that's my life for eternity, doing things that just make my heart sing, right? Because this is one of the interesting challenges about the idea of timelessness and immortality. Do I want to live forever in the life I'm living right now? With the thoughts I have right now? With the fears I have right now? Because if we don't want to be timeless, if we don't want to be immortal, we won't be. Right? So suddenly we start to really look at our life and say, okay, well then if this moment is going to continue forever, I better make sure I'm doing things I love. And even that is a curious shift of philosophy, right? Because philosophically we're told, no, there are things that you have to do. Here are the things you have to do. This is proper, being a proper citizen or a proper this or a proper, Matt is so limiting this thing that I'm saying, right? And you have to really ask yourself. These are existential questions about why we are here as humans. Is that really why we're here? And it isn't that we never, do things that we have to do. Like, it was funny yesterday, I, spent time with you guys and in between the talks, I felt this real desire to do all my bookkeeping. This is not something I normally, and I hadn't done it in a few months, right? Like I just, for whatever reason, I was super, in a super creative space and I just wasn't doing it. But yesterday, what I really wanted was to sit on my computer, and I do all my bookkeeping on spreadsheets, and I just wanted to balance all these spreadsheets and get everything happening and just do the whole financial thing. That doesn't sound like it's not writing erotica, right? But I was blissfully happy. It was what I was called to do that day. And I sat here and I drank tea and did my thing and had classical music playing, and I just sat there so happy finding where the pennies were missing. Right? Timelessness isn't about what we're doing. It's just about doing what we're called to do, or doing what our soul is present for in that moment. If I had tried to write erotica because my brain said that is how we're going to spend eternity, I wouldn't have been eternal. That's where my soul was. That's what my soul was calling. Right? It's so funny. I had this whole talk planned that we were going to do, and I don't know if I'm even going to get to it. Well, now that I've mentioned it, we'll go there. This timelessness thing, you just never know where it's going to go. So as serendipity would have it, last spring I was really pondering this timelessness concept, really, because again, like I really believe we are in an ascension. We are in a very interesting time in the universe. I don't begin to understand it, but I've sensed it since 2012, so it only makes sense that this is continuing, right? And then, of course, what happens is I watch this movie called The Infinite Potential. No, Infinite Potential, The Life and Time of David Bohm, which I've mentioned many times to you guys. And of course, I'm watching this. And again, with this timelessness, immortality concept rolling through my mind. And he starts talking about this quantum field of possibility. And how in every moment, our bodies are going into the quantum field and coming back into a physical form. And releasing into energy, coming back into physical form. And I'm watching this. And something in me is going, this is important, this is important. And what's interesting about quantum physics is Newtonian physics, the physics of Sir Isaac Newton, for example, and everything that's connected to it, focuses on this physical, what we see, this physical creation, right? I am X number of pounds heavy. I am this tall. I am this old. It's all about measurement, right? What's interesting about quantum physics, quanta is just simply the parts of our atoms that are smaller than an atom, right? It's not this. It's not the manifest. It's what makes the manifest. What is this made of? And when you think of this in terms of timelessness, when you think of what we're made of, as physical as this looks, this is made of atoms. An atom is a emptiness with a charged particle, an electrified something flying around it in an orbit. That's all it is. Just a charged, an energetic, charged particle. And all of these little energetic nothings, this charged nothingness, through magnetism, doesn't even touch our cells. Our atoms aren't even touching. They're just magnetically close. And somehow this exists. There's nothing else. It's not like in between the atoms there's skin and bone. This is charged particle. So now when we think of immortality and timelessness, do you think that those charged particles have age? Do you think an electron is older or younger? Do you think there's any sense of time in an atom? I don't think so. It's just an electrical charge. It's like the sun. It's just a light. So at our very core, what makes us up are bits of timelessness. They don't live in time. So our atoms are not connected to time. This is really important. So then all of a sudden, as our atoms, being part of the quantum field, manifest, how are they manifesting? Who decides how old I am? Who decides if I'm any age at all? What if I'm just here? What if I'm just here for eternity? Right? And that's one thing I realized, like when I was reading the Masters of the Far East, they would, talk about these people who they themselves didn't talk in years. They wouldn't have said, oh, I'm 400 years old or I'm 120 years old. They wouldn't have said that because they're not clocking time. They just are forever, right? It's a whole different way of seeing the world that we're not, and it's interesting on a really practical level to actually try it because there are things we can do every single day, very tiny things that can shift into this timeless perspective. Because I think it takes time. I think it's an organic shift. It's not like I just decide as of right now I'm timeless. I think we slowly massage our current understanding into a new understanding, and then we can't remember ever being in the old way. So for example, imagine we don't talk about So how often do we hear in the world, oh, well, at this age, I can't really do what I used to be able to do. It's like, really? What does that mean? Right? There are people who run marathons when they're 100 years old. If we desire it, our bodies will respond. The universe will conspire to create whatever we want. The question becomes, what do we believe? Do we believe that our eyesight goes sideways as soon as we turn 40? Do we believe that as we get older, our bones get older and do we believe that? The atoms that make us up haven't gotten older. So why is this happening? And it's not even just a theory. Like, these people exist who have transcended the concepts of time. Right? There's so many interesting things happening in the world right now. Right? I read about one group that had really been looking at this, and women in their 70s started to menstruate again and had to have children. Right? And I can feel like people will be like, oh my God, I'm done with that. But if you're here forever, what difference does it make if we have a child at any age, right? It's not like that. We're not planning our life within a 70, 80, 90, 100-year span. We're just here doing what we're called to do. It's very, very, very different. So then after I watched this movie, I did a series of classes with the people who had known David Bohm, all the scientists, and they're so interesting. It was just the universe conspires to help us. I literally was like, I want to learn more about this. Here's a Zoom call every Friday, every Saturday and Sunday with amazing people from around the world. Just awesome. So one of the teachers, and I spoke about this in a few other talks, was a native elder from Alberta, Canada, named Leroy Littlebear. And he also was friends with David Bohm, and they compared notes on Blackfoot native spirituality and quantum physics. I mean, you can imagine how excited I am, right? And what was really interesting about what he's taught was that the idea of like E equals MC squared, that energy is a function of the speed of light and matter kind of idea, that we are constantly interchanging matter and energy through this wonderful, exploration or integration with the quantum field. The native elders, when Leroy Littlebear went back and told them about it, they were like, duh, of course. I'm pretty sure they didn't say duh, but they were like, well, of course, because in their understanding, in their cosmology, human beings are made of spirit. Everything is made of spirit, right? And spirit is constant flux. Spirit is energy. So the idea that we are constantly interacting and renewing from the quantum field, that's what they believe anyway, right? And for me, as soon as science agrees with spirituality like a glove, just amazing bells go off in my soul, right? But one of the most interesting things that really relates to this timelessness and immortality concept is that in the native tradition, it's all about renewal. That every moment is about renewal. So we are constantly in a state of renewal. So I am sitting in this moment, this eternal moment, and my system is constantly renewing. I am in total communion with the quantum field, and in every moment, in every breath, I am renewing this physical being, right? Renewing from infinity in every moment. So what guides this perpetual renewal? How will I look? How will I be? How will I think in every moment as I renew? Well, it's 100% based on my presence and what I think, what I desire, what I believe in the world. That is my constant state of renewal. This is a beautiful way to live, right? Regardless of how far we take the ideas of timelessness and immortality, to simply know that in every moment, every thought, every experience is guiding my perpetual renewal in the infinite field. What a fantastic way to live, right? Then suddenly, like literally, the potential, the infinite potential is always right here. You know, and it doesn't mean we suddenly have to go and create incredible things or invent amazing things. It just means it's all right here, whether I'm doing a cross-stick puzzle or we're all hanging out here or I'm reading a book or lying in the sunshine, right? Just constant renewal. So in that moment, if you feel that, right, to really feel that in your own body, this sense of constant renewal, right, you can almost feel the timeless aspect. You can feel this incredible center. Well, if this moment simply existed forever, and the sun went up, and the sun goes down, and the sun goes up, and the sun goes down, but I am here in this moment, right? This is immortality. This is timelessness. The sun still goes up and goes down, and I'll eat lunch in a little while and do some other fun things, but I'm just here in constant connection, constant renewal. You know? Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been wonderful. Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I believe it's part of something we're all stepping into organically. I believe we're all at the forefront of this. None of us have wisdom beyond where we are right now. We are literally shifting with the world into a very different consciousness, a very different way of experiencing our moments. I hope you have a lovely day or a lovely evening wherever you are. And we will see you soon in our next eternal moment together.